Waitress was fired for helping black owner disguised as homeless. The ending is shocking. The first light of dawn had barely touched the polished windows of Lumineux when Emily Carter arrived for her morning shift. The upscale restaurant, nestled in the heart of downtown, was known for its exquisite French cuisine and equally exquisite prices. Emily adjusted her crisp black uniform, smoothing out invisible wrinkles as she walked through the employee entrance. At 28, she had been working at Lumineux for 3 years, longer than most waitstaff lasted in the high-pressure environment. "Morning, Sal," she called to the aging janitor who was buffing the already gleaming marble floors. "Morning, sunshine," he replied with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Ready for another day in paradise?" Emily laughed, the sound echoing in the empty dining room. "As ready as I'll ever be. Table 12 has a reservation for the Montgomery party at noon. And you know how they are." "Oh, I know," Sal nodded, leaning on his mop. "Mrs. Montgomery sent back her water 3 times last visit because it wasn't cold enough." "Exactly. So I'm mentally preparing myself." Emily continued to the back, greeting the kitchen staff who were already busy preparing for the lunch service. The scent of fresh bread and simmering sauces filled the air, making her stomach growl. She hadn't had time for breakfast that morning, rent was due, and she had spent an extra hour picking up an early cleaning shift at her second job. The restaurant began to come alive as the morning progressed. The hostess, Vanessa, arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless. The manager, Richard Klein, walked in shortly after, his sharp eyes immediately scanning the restaurant for any imperfections. "Carter," he barked, noticing a smudge on one of the wine glasses. Emily was polishing. "Do that again. This isn't some diner, it's Lumineux." "Yes, Mr. Klein," Emily replied, keeping her voice neutral. She had learned long ago that arguing with Richard was pointless. Besides, she needed this job. Tips from Lumineux covered most of her rent and helped support her younger sister through community college. By noon, Lumineux was buzzing with activity. The lunch crowd consisted mostly of business executives, lawyers, and the occasional celebrity, all drawn by the restaurant's reputation and exclusivity. Emily moved efficiently between tables, her smile never faltering despite the demanding customers and Richard's constant scrutiny. It was during the busiest part of the lunch service when he first appeared. The man shuffled through the grand entrance, causing Vanessa's perfectly penciled eyebrows to shoot up in alarm. He was dark-skinned, with a salt and pepper beard that was unkempt and wild. His clothes, a tattered army jacket despite the warm weather, stained jeans and scuffed boots, stood in stark contrast to the restaurant's opulent decor and well-dressed clientele. "Excuse me," Vanessa's voice was sharp as she intercepted him. "Can I help you?" The man kept his eyes downcast. "Just wondering if I could get a glass of water," he said, his voice soft but with an unexpected articulation that caught Emily's attention from across the room. "This is a private establishment," Vanessa replied, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. "We're fully booked for lunch. Perhaps there's somewhere else more suitable." Emily watched as several customers turned to stare, some with undisguised disgust, others with uncomfortable curiosity. At table 14, Mrs. Harrington clutched her designer handbag closer to her chest, as if the man might snatch it at any moment. "I don't need a table," the man explained patiently. "Just some water, it's pretty hot out there." Richard materialized beside Vanessa, his face a mask of professional disdain. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have a strict dress code policy." Emily bit her lip, continuing to serve her tables while keeping an eye on the situation. The man nodded slowly, still not making eye contact, and turned to leave. As he passed near her section, Emily made a split-second decision. She grabbed an unused glass, filled it with ice water, and quickly approached him. "Here," she said quietly, offering him the glass. "It's hot out there." The man looked up, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. His were a deep brown, intelligent and somehow piercing, catching Emily off guard. There was something in that gaze, a depth, a wisdom perhaps, that seemed at odds with his appearance. "Thank you," he said simply, taking the glass with hands that Emily noticed were surprisingly clean and well-maintained despite his otherwise disheveled appearance. "Carter?" Richard's sharp voice cut through the moment. "Table 9 needs their check." Emily nodded at the man with a small smile before hurrying back to her section. From the corner of her eye, she saw him drink the water quickly before setting the glass down on an empty serving station and departing without another word. Did you seriously just serve that homeless guy? Vanessa hissed as Emily passed the hostess stand. It was just water, Vanessa. Do you know what kind of customers we cater to? They don't come here to dine next to street people. Emily shrugged. He's gone now, no harm done. But the incident didn't end there. The next day, to everyone's surprise, the man returned. This time he arrived during the afternoon lull between lunch and dinner service. There were fewer customers to witness his entrance, but Richard's reaction was just as swift. Sir, as I explained yesterday, we cannot accommodate you here. The man nodded again, that same patience evident in his posture. I understand. You thought wrong, Richard cut him off. Please leave before I'm forced to call security. Emily was setting tables for the dinner service when she noticed the exchange. Once again she felt a pull of compassion. When Richard disappeared into his office and Vanessa was occupied with a phone reservation, Emily approached the man who was still lingering near the entrance. Hey, she said softly. There's a staff meal in the back. Nothing fancy, just some pasta the chef made too much of. I could wrap some up for you if you'd like. The man studied her face, and again Emily had this strange sensation that she was being evaluated somehow. That's very kind, he finally said. But I don't want to get you in trouble. It's fine, Emily assured him, though she knew it wasn't. Wait here. She hurried to the kitchen, where the staff were indeed finishing up their pre-service meal. She grabbed a clean takeout container, the kind they used for high-end leftovers, and filled it with the remaining pasta, adding a dinner roll and even a slice of the chocolate torte that was a customer favorite. Chef Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing, as she packed the food. He was stern but fair, and had a soft spot for Emily, who always treated his culinary creations with the respect he felt they deserved. Emily returned to the entrance, container in hand, only to find the man engaged in what appeared to be a heated conversation with Richard. She slowed her approach, unsure whether to intervene. Don't care what your story is, Richard was saying. Voice low but intense. This is the last time you show up here, or I'm calling the police. The man was nodding again, and Emily was struck by the dignity in his bearing, despite Richard's condescension. She waited until Richard stormed off before approaching. Here, she said, offering the container. It's still warm. Thank you, Emily, the man said, taking the food. Emily blinked in surprise. How do you know my name? For the first time she saw a hint of a smile beneath the wild beard. Your name tag, he pointed out gently. Oh, Emily laughed at herself. Right. Sorry, it's been a long day. No need to apologize. What you're doing is, he paused, seeming to search for the right word. Remarkable. Before Emily could respond, she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Tiffany, another waitress, her expression a mixture of disbelief and mockery. Emily, table 20 needs more bread. Unless you're too busy with your friend here. The way she said friend made it clear what she thought of the situation. I'll be right there, Emily replied, then turned back to the man. I hope that helps. Take care. He nodded, clutching the container. More than you know. Until next time, Emily. As she walked away, Emily could hear Tiffany and Vanessa whispering. She's always been soft, Tiffany said. Remember when she spent her entire break helping that old lady find her missing earring? It's pathetic, Vanessa agreed. She thinks she's Mother Teresa or something. All she's doing is encouraging him to keep coming back. Emily kept her head high, focusing on her tables. Let them talk. There was nothing wrong with showing a little kindness in a world that often seemed to have too little of it. Besides, there was something about the man that intrigued her, something that didn't quite match the narrative everyone else had created about him. What she didn't know was that her small acts of compassion had not gone unnoticed, and that the man she was helping was far more than he appeared to be. For Benjamin Cole, the secret owner of Lumineux and 14 other high-end restaurants across the country, Emily Carter had just become the most interesting person in his establishment, for all the right reasons. Benjamin Cole sat in the back of his luxury sedan, carefully removing the adhesive that held his fake beard in place. His driver, Marcus, watched through the rearview mirror with quiet amusement. How did it go today, sir? Marcus asked, pulling away from the curb 3 blocks from Lumineux. Benjamin sighed, wincing as he peeled away the last of the spirit gum. About the same as yesterday, except for that waitress. The one you mentioned, Emily? Yes, Benjamin nodded, reaching for the wet wipes he kept in the car for these transformations. She gave me food today. Good food too, not scraps or leftovers. A full staff meal. At 52, Benjamin Cole had built his restaurant empire from nothing. The son of sharecroppers from rural Georgia, he'd worked his way up from dishwasher to chef to owner, eventually creating the prestigious Stellaris restaurant group that now included 15 high-end establishments across the country. Success had come at a price though. In recent years, he'd grown increasingly disconnected from the day-to-day operations, trusting his management teams to maintain the standards of excellence and humanity he'd built his brand on. It was his daughter, Zoe, a recent business school graduate, who had first raised concerns. "Dad, I had dinner at Luminu last week," she had told him during their monthly catch-up call. The food was exceptional as always, but the atmosphere, it felt cold. Clinical almost, like no one actually cared about hospitality anymore. Her words had haunted him. Benjamin had always believed that true hospitality came from the heart, it couldn't be faked or manufactured. It was why he'd succeeded where others had failed. Somewhere along the way, had his restaurants lost that soul? The disguise had been Zoe's idea too. "Remember that show you love? Undercover Boss? Do your own version, Dad. See for yourself what's happening when no one knows who you are." And so, Benjamin Cole, whose face rarely appeared in the media despite his success, had transformed himself into a homeless man seeking small kindnesses at his own establishments. What he'd discovered so far had been deeply troubling. "I've been to 6 of my restaurants now," Benjamin told Marcus, as he changed into a tailored suit in the privacy of the vehicle's spacious rear compartment. "Luminu is by far the worst. That manager, Richard Klein, he's created a toxic culture. The staff are either like him or afraid of him, except Emily." Marcus nodded, turning onto the highway toward Benjamin's penthouse apartment. "What makes her different?" Benjamin considered this as he buttoned his crisp white shirt. "Authenticity. She's not helping me for show or for tips. There's no audience, no reward. In fact, she's risking her job." He frowned, remembering the whispers he'd overheard. The other staff mock her for it. Back in his apartment, Benjamin reviewed the notes he'd been keeping on his phone. "Luminu, Day. Richard Klein, dismissive, threatened to call police, spoke condescendingly even when no customers were present, possibly creating hostile work environment. Vanessa, hostess, openly disgusted, clutched purse when I walked by, made derogatory comments about street people. Tiffany, waitress, mocked Emily for helping, called her pathetic and soft. Chef neutral, didn't stop Emily from taking food but didn't offer help either. Older janitor, only other person who made eye contact, offered small nod. Emily Carter, consistently kind, offered water first day, food second day, genuinely concerned, not performative. Treated me with dignity despite my appearance." Benjamin added today's observations, then flipped through his notebook where he'd been recording similar experiences at his other restaurants. The pattern was clear. Somewhere in the pursuit of excellence and exclusivity, compassion had been squeezed out of the equation. His phone rang, Zoe's face lighting up the screen. "Hey sweetheart," he answered. "Dad, how's Operation Homeless Guy going?" Benjamin chuckled. "It's enlightening. And a little heartbreaking." "That bad, huh?" "Let's just say I've got some serious work to do." He hesitated. "I'm going back to Lumino tomorrow. I want to see how far this Emily woman will go to help someone she thinks is homeless." "You're not setting her up to get fired, are you?" Zoe sounded concerned. No. But I need to know if her kindness holds up under pressure. Everyone can be nice when it's easy." The next morning Benjamin donned his disguise again, this time adding some subtle enhancements, a slight limp, darker circles under his eyes achieved with careful makeup. He wanted to appear even more in need of help, to see who would rise to the occasion. As Marcus drove him to a drop-off point near Luminu, Benjamin reviewed his plan. Today would be the final test. Tomorrow would be the reckoning. What no one at Luminu realized was that their lives were about to change dramatically. Benjamin Cole was not just gathering information, he was preparing to completely overhaul the culture of his flagship restaurant. And Emily Carter, the waitress who had shown kindness to a stranger, would play a central role in that transformation. Benjamin just hoped she was. The morning staff meeting at Luminu was tense. Richard Klein stood at the head of the table, his thin lips pressed into a disapproving line as he surveyed the waitstaff. "I want to address an ongoing issue," he began, drumming his manicured fingers against the polished surface. "Our establishment has a certain caliber of clientele to maintain. They expect an experience free from disturbances." Emily knew what was coming. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the notepad where she was supposed to be writing the day's specials. "That homeless man has returned twice now," Richard continued, his gaze fixing pointedly on Emily. "And some of us have been encouraging his presence." Vanessa, seated beside Richard, nodded emphatically. "It's completely inappropriate. Mrs. Rothschild actually commented on it yesterday." Emily felt the heat of everyone's stares. She looked up, meeting Richard's cold eyes. "He just wanted water," she said quietly. It was 90 degrees outside. Richard's jaw tightened. "Emily, may I remind you that Lumineux is not a soup kitchen? We have a reputation to uphold. If every vagrant in the city thought they could walk in here for handouts, we'd lose our entire customer base." "I don't think giving someone water counts as a handout," Emily countered, surprising herself with her boldness. "It's basic human decency." A few uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. Sal, the janitor who had paused his morning cleaning to listen from the doorway, gave Emily a subtle nod of approval. Richard's face flushed with irritation. "Let me be crystal clear. The next time that man shows up, he is to be turned away immediately. No water, no food, no exceptions. Is that understood?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the staff. Emily remained silent. "Emily?" Richard prompted, his tone dangerous. She met his gaze again. "I understand what you're saying, Mr. Klein." "Good," he replied, though his expression suggested he didn't believe her. "Now, let's discuss tonight's VIP reservations." The meeting continued, but Emily's mind was elsewhere. She thought about the man's eyes, intelligent, observant, with unexpected dignity. There was something about him that didn't fit the narrative Richard and the others had constructed. Emily had grown up in a household where her mother worked 3 jobs after her father left, where sometimes the electricity got shut off because bills couldn't be paid on time. She knew that circumstances rarely told the whole story about a person. The lunch service was particularly busy, giving Emily little time to dwell on the morning's confrontation. It wasn't until the mid-afternoon lull that she spotted him again, the homeless man standing hesitantly at the restaurant's entrance. Vanessa immediately moved to intercept him, her voice carrying across the half-empty dining room. "Sir, we've already explained that we cannot serve you here. Please leave before we're forced to call security." Emily watched as the man nodded apologetically. He looked worse today, more tired, slightly unsteady on his feet. Was he ill? The thought propelled her forward before she could second-guess herself. "Vanessa, it's fine, he's leaving," Emily said, approaching them. "I'll make sure of it." Vanessa gave her a suspicious look but retreated to her station, keeping a watchful eye on them. "I'm sorry," Emily said quietly to the man. "My manager has explicitly forbidden us from helping you." The man nodded slowly. "I understand. Times are hard for everyone." Emily glanced around. Richard was nowhere to be seen, probably in his office preparing for the evening service. Without further deliberation, she gestured to a small table in the corner. "Sit down for a moment," she said. "I'll get you something to drink." "Are you sure?" the man asked, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want to cause trouble. It's just coffee," Emily replied with a small smile. "Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." She guided him to the table, acutely aware of the stares from the few remaining lunch customers and her fellow staff members. Emily hurried to the service station, poured a cup of coffee and added a small plate with 2 fresh rolls still warm from the kitchen. As she set these items before the man, Richard emerged from his office, his face darkening with fury when he spotted the scene unfolding in his restaurant. "Emily," he shouted, striding toward them. "What do you think you're doing?" The few customers present turned to watch the confrontation with uncomfortable interest. "He needed to sit down," Emily explained calmly. "I'm just giving him some coffee. After I explicitly forbade it this morning." Richard's voice was dangerously quiet now. "This is direct insubordination." Emily stood her ground. "Mr. Klein? He's a human being, not an inconvenience to be removed." Richard's face contorted with anger. "That's it. You're fired. Collect your things and leave immediately." A hush fell over the restaurant. Emily felt her heart hammering in her chest. But strangely, there was also a sense of relief. She'd known this job wouldn't last forever, especially not with her growing discomfort at how the establishment treated people. "Fine," she said, untying her apron. She turned to the man, whose expression was unreadable beneath his beard. "I'm sorry they treated you like this." The man's eyes held hers for a long moment. "Don't be sorry," he said softly. "Some things are worth standing up for." Emily gathered her few belongings from the staff room, ignoring the whispers and stares. As she walked out through the dining room one last time, head held high, she didn't notice the man quietly slipping out behind her, nor did she see him pull out a phone the moment he was outside. She definitely didn't hear him say into the phone, "Marcus? It's me. We're moving to Phase 2, tomorrow morning." The following morning at Lumineux began like any other. Sal polished the floors to a mirror shine. The kitchen staff prepped for lunch service, chopping vegetables and reducing sauces. Richard Klein arrived at 9:30 a.m., barking orders about a private event scheduled for that evening. "Where's the new waitress?" he demanded, noticing the gap in the staff left by Emily's dismissal. "Marissa?" she called in sick. Tiffany replied with a smirk. "Guess she heard about what happened to Emily." Richard scowled. "We don't need people who can't handle the standards of this establishment anyway. Vanessa, you'll cover Section 3 today, at precisely 10 a.m. Heads turned as the purr of a luxury car engine drew attention outside. A sleek black Mercedes Maybach pulled up directly in front of Lumineux's entrance, parking in a spot reserved for valet service. "Who the hell parked there?" Richard muttered, striding toward the entrance. "The lunch service doesn't start for another hour." The restaurant staff gathered curiously as a uniformed driver exited the vehicle and opened the rear passenger door. A tall, well-built black man in an impeccably tailored navy suit stepped out. His presence commanded attention. Sharp eyes, closely cropped salt and pepper hair, an air of unmistakable authority. Richard plastered on his customer service smile as the man approached the entrance. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't open until 11 a.m., but I'd be happy to take your reservation for later." The man regarded Richard silently for a moment, his gaze penetrating. There was something vaguely familiar about him that caused Richard's smile to falter. "I don't need a reservation, Mr. Klein," the man finally said, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. "I own the place." A collective gasp rippled through the staff. This was Benjamin Cole, the elusive founder and CEO of Stellaris Restaurant Group, a man whose name appeared on their paychecks, but whose face most had never seen in person. Richard went pale. "Mr. Cole, we weren't expecting you. If we had known—" "That's precisely the point, Richard," Benjamin cut him off, stepping past him into the restaurant. "I wanted to see Lumineux as it really operates, not as you would present it to me with advance notice." Benjamin turned to address the entire staff, who had gathered in stunned silence. "I believe a staff meeting is in order. Everyone, please join me in the dining room." Now, the staff assembled hastily, exchanging nervous glances. Benjamin took position at the head of the room, his presence filling the space without effort. "For the past week," he began, his voice measured but firm, "I've been visiting this restaurant and others in our group, not as Benjamin Cole's CEO, but as a homeless man seeking basic kindness." Recognition dawned on their faces, followed by horror as the implications set in. "Yes," Benjamin nodded, noting their expressions. "The homeless man you've been turning away, mocking, and treating with contempt was me. I wanted to see who among you embodies the core values this company was built on: dignity, respect, and true hospitality." He turned to Richard, whose face had drained of all color. "When I founded this company 20 years ago, I was once refused service at my own first restaurant because of the color of my skin. I was wearing a suit that day, but it didn't matter. I swore then that my establishments would judge no one, that they would be places where everyone was treated with dignity." Benjamin pulled out his phone and began scrolling through notes. "Richard Klein, you referred to me as garbage when speaking to your staff. You threatened to call the police on me for asking for water. You created an environment where cruelty is rewarded and compassion is punished." Richard swallowed hard. "Mr. Cole, I can explain." "Vanessa," Benjamin continued, ignoring Richard's attempt to speak. "You clutched your purse when I walked by, as if poverty were a contagious disease. You referred to me as disgusting and a stain on the restaurant's image. Vanessa's perfectly made-up face crumpled in mortification. Tiffany, you mocked the only person who showed me kindness. You called her pathetic for treating me like a human being. Tiffany stared at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. Benjamin's expression softened slightly as he turned to Sal. You nodded to me, a small gesture, but it acknowledged my humanity. Thank you for that. The aging janitor nodded back, a small smile on his weathered face. And Emily Carter, Benjamin said, his voice carrying a note of admiration, was the only one among you who consistently treated me with dignity and respect. She gave me water when I was thirsty, food when I was hungry, a place to sit when I was weary, and for this kindness she was publicly humiliated and fired. The room was deathly silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped their preparations to listen. Emily didn't see a homeless man, Benjamin continued. She saw a human being deserving of basic decency. That's the foundation this company was built on. The foundation that somewhere along the way you forgot. He straightened his shoulders, his decision evident in his posture before he even spoke the words. What happens next, Benjamin said, his eyes sweeping across the assembled staff, will change the future of Lumineux forever. Benjamin Cole paced slowly in front of the assembled staff, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. The silence in the restaurant was absolute, even the kitchen's usual clamor had ceased. Richard, Benjamin said finally, turning to face the manager who stood rigid with apprehension. How long have you been with Stellaris Restaurant Group? Richard cleared his throat. 7 years, sir. I've increased Lumineux's profits by 35% in that time. Yes, the numbers look impressive on paper, Benjamin acknowledged with a nod. But at what cost? The soul of this restaurant has been gutted under your leadership. He approached Richard, standing directly before him. You've created a culture of fear and elitism that goes against everything I built this company to stand for. You fired a woman for showing basic human decency, the very quality we should value most. Richard's face had taken on an ashen hue. Mr. Cole, I was only trying to maintain our exclusive atmosphere. Exclusive doesn't mean exclusionary, Benjamin cut in sharply. There's a difference between excellence and elitism. One elevates everyone, the other tears people down. He turned to address the entire staff again. When I started this company, I was told a black man couldn't run upscale restaurants. That fine dining belonged to a certain type of person, a certain class. I refused to accept that limitation, just as I refused to accept cruelty as a business model. Benjamin reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a folder. Richard Klein, Vanessa Mercer, and Tiffany Powell, you're all terminated, effective immediately. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembled staff. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock, while Tiffany began to protest. Mr. Cole, please, it was just jokes. We didn't mean anything by it. Benjamin held up his hand. This isn't a negotiation or a discussion. My decision is final. My assistant will process your final paychecks. Please collect your belongings and leave the premises within the hour. Richard's face contorted with anger. You can't do this. I've made this restaurant what it is today. That's precisely the problem, Benjamin replied calmly. The culture you've fostered here is toxic and contrary to our values. I should have been more present, more vigilant about what was happening in my restaurants. That's on me, but what's on you is choosing profit over people at every turn. He turned to the remaining staff, who watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. As for the rest of you, this is a wake-up call. Starting today, character and compassion will be formally included in all employee evaluations. How you treat people, all people matters, just as much as how well you can describe the wine list or balance a tray. Chef Marcus stepped forward hesitantly. Mr. Cole, what about our reservations tonight? The kitchen is prepped, but without a manager and 2 servers. Benjamin smiled for the first time that morning. We'll manage. I'll be bringing in interim staff from our downtown location this afternoon. He paused, looking around the room. But first, we need to make something right. He gestured to his driver, who had been waiting quietly by the entrance. Marcus, is everything ready? Yes, sir, the car is waiting. Benjamin addressed the staff once more. Lumineux will be closed for lunch service today. Instead, we're going to implement some immediate changes. First, I'm introducing a new program across all Stellaris restaurants. a weekly community meal where we invite those in need to dine with dignity in our establishments. The announcement was met with uncertain looks and hesitant nods. Second, we're going to renovate the staff area. Those working conditions are unacceptable. Benjamin's gaze swept across the room. And third, we're going to bring back the person who best represents what Lumineux should stand for. As Richard, Vanessa, and Tiffany collected their belongings under the watchful eye of Benjamin's security team, the remaining staff gathered in small groups, whispering among themselves. Some looked relieved, others anxious about the sudden changes. Sal approached Benjamin cautiously. "Mr. Cole, if I may. Emily's apartment is about 20 minutes from here. She lives with her younger sister who's in college. She's probably home now looking for a new job." Benjamin smiled warmly at the older man. "Thank you, Sal. That's exactly the information I needed." He pulled out his phone, made a quick call, then turned back to the janitor. "Would you like to come with me? I think Emily would appreciate seeing a friendly face." Sal's weathered face broke into a wide smile. "I'd be honored, sir." As they walked toward the entrance, Benjamin placed a hand on Sal's shoulder. "And Sal, I'd like to discuss a promotion with you when we return. I think Lumineux could use someone with your observation skills and humanity in a management position." The older man's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a janitor." Benjamin shook his head. "There's no just about it. You saw what others missed, the humanity in a person they dismissed. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need." As Benjamin's car pulled away from Lumineux, the fired employees watched from the sidewalk, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. What they didn't yet realize was that their public dismissal was only the beginning of the day's surprises. Emily Carter sat at her small kitchen table, scrolling through job listings on her laptop. Her apartment was modest, but clean, a two-bedroom unit in an aging building that she shared with her younger sister Mia, who was currently at her community college classes. Less than 24 hours had passed since her dismissal from Lumineux, and though Emily had spent the morning applying for waitressing positions at other restaurants, her heart wasn't in it. The way she'd been fired for simply showing kindness had left her questioning whether she wanted to continue in the restaurant industry at all. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Emily wasn't expecting anyone, and solicitors rarely made it past the building's security door. Curious, she peered through the peephole, surprised to see Sal's familiar face. "Sal?" she said, opening the door. "What are you doing here?" The older man smiled warmly. "Hey Emily, I'm not alone." He stepped aside to reveal a well-dressed man. Emily didn't recognize. "Miss Carter," the stranger said, extending his hand. "I'm Benjamin Cole." Emily blinked in confusion, automatically shaking his hand. "I'm sorry. Should I know who you are?" A small smile played at the corner of Benjamin's mouth. "May we come in? I believe we have some important matters to discuss." Emily hesitated, then nodded, stepping back to allow them entry. She gestured toward her small living room, suddenly self-conscious about the worn furniture and the basket of unfolded laundry in the corner. "Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Maybe?" she asked, falling back on her hospitality training. "No need," Benjamin replied, settling onto her couch. "I won't take much of your time. I wanted to speak with you about what happened at Lumineux yesterday." Emily's expression hardened. "If Richard sent you to have me sign something, you can tell him." "Richard Klein no longer works at Lumineux," Benjamin interjected calmly. "Neither do Vanessa or Tiffany." Emily's eyes widened. "What? Since when?" "Since this morning," Sal chimed in, his eyes twinkling. "You should have seen it, Emily. It was something else." Benjamin leaned forward, his gaze intent. "Miss Carter, do you recognize me at all?" Emily studied his face, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. There was something about his eyes, deep, intelligent, observant. Then it clicked. You're the homeless man," she whispered, stunned. "But you're not homeless at all, are you?" Benjamin shook his head. "No. I'm the owner of Stella Reyes Restaurant Group, which includes Lumineux and 14 other restaurants across the country. I've been visiting my establishments in disguise to see how they truly operate when no one knows who I am." Emily sank into a chair processing this revelation. "So everything, the water, the food, it was all a test?" "A test that most of my employees failed," Benjamin confirmed. "But not you. You showed genuine compassion without expectation of reward or recognition." In fact, you risked your job to uphold basic human dignity. Emily's mind raced. Is that why you're here? To tell me I was right? I'm here to offer you a job, Benjamin stated simply. But not just any job. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on her coffee table. This contains an offer of employment as the new general manager of Luminu, with a starting salary of $95,000 per year, full benefits, and most importantly a 5% ownership stake in the restaurant itself. Emily stared at the envelope, certain she had misheard. What? But I've never managed a restaurant before. I'm just a waitress. You're far more than just anything, Benjamin replied firmly. You possess something that can't be taught, genuine care for people, and an instinctive understanding of true hospitality. The technical aspects of management can be learned. Character cannot. Emily's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. This can't be real. It's very real, Benjamin assured her. I've spent my career building restaurants that serve exceptional food, but somewhere along the way, some of my establishments forgot that how we treat people matters most. I need someone like you to help bring that vision back to life. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she opened the envelope, scanning the contract with its life-changing figures. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Sal encouraged, beaming. I'm being promoted to assistant manager. We're going to transform Luminu together. Benjamin stood, smoothing his suit jacket. Take 24 hours to think about it if you need to. The offer stands either way. Emily rose as well, wiping away tears. I don't need 24 hours. Yes. My answer is yes. 3 months later, Luminu was thriving under new management. The restaurant had maintained its reputation for culinary excellence, while becoming known for something else, its genuine warmth and inclusivity. Every Monday evening, the restaurant hosted a community dinner where people experiencing homelessness were served a dignified meal alongside regular patrons. The story had gone viral after a customer recorded Emily explaining the restaurant's new philosophy to a dining critic. Benjamin's undercover boss experiment and Emily's dramatic rise from fired waitress to part owner became the subject of news segments, magazine articles, and social media posts that reached millions. Meanwhile, Richard, Vanessa, and Tiffany found themselves essentially blacklisted from high-end establishments, their public firing serving as a cautionary tale throughout the industry. Their attempts to defend their actions only worsened their situation as the public embraced Emily's and Benjamin's message about dignity and respect. As Emily walked through Luminu during the dinner service, checking on customers and guiding her staff, she paused at table 7, the table where she had served coffee to a homeless man and lost her job. Now it was permanently reserved for community members in need, a symbol of the transformation that had occurred. Benjamin had been right. One small act of kindness hadn't just changed her life, it had changed an entire company's culture forever.